Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to the Big Blue View YouTube channel. With the NFL draft just a couple days away, it's pretty much time to quit the speculation and get to exactly what the Giants are going to do on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And here to tell me exactly what all of those things are going to be is the always in the know Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants and Giants Country, a good friend of Big Blue View. Patty, how are you? And welcome to the show.
First off, thank you. But since when am I always in the know? I'm guessing like everybody else is.
See, you wrecked it, Patty. You
I
wrecked
know,
it.
but listen, I'm honest at least.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, that you know. Actually, let's start there, Patty. One of the things that I've said, going into this draft is, I think back to the year when Jerry Reese got jumped twice in the draft when he wanted Jack Conklin and when he wanted, Leonard Floyd. And I think the entire world knew that. And two teams jumped up in front of him and then he didn't know what to do and he wound up drafting Eli Apple. Um, and I look at the Giants this year and you look at, I always tend to, when we get close, I tend to really hone in and listen to some of the insiders. And if you start to hear the same sort of message from a lot of the insiders, you tend to think, oh, there's got to be something to that. But I don't know about you, but when you when you hear some of the chatter now, you're hearing some insiders say one thing and some insiders say something completely different about who the Giants like, what they might do. And for me, I think this means Joe Shane has done a masterful job of hiding his intentions, of hiding exactly how he's going to approach the sixth pick. I'm just curious if you agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. No disrespect to our colleagues, but I question how many out there really know what the Giants are going to do.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. I don't. I mean, Joe Shea might know what he was going to do, and so would Brian Dable, and maybe a select circle. But at this point, to a degree, do they even know for sure what they're going to do? Because it's going to depend on how the board falls. So to sit there and say, oh, the Giants are definitely going to take this guy at 6, or the Giants are definitely going to trade up, you can't say that because you don't know how the draft board is going to fall. And every year, do we not see instances where suddenly there's a curveball thrown out that nobody saw coming and are like, whoa, this is a game changer now in the first round, and that just affects everything behind it. So nobody knows at this point. What we can do is we can take educated guesses. We can try to piece together the puzzle pieces that are out there, but I don't know that anybody really is going to get a complete picture. And those of us who guessed correctly, hey, we can pat ourselves on the back, great, but doesn't mean that we knew all along.
No, because we're all trying to read the tea leaves. And listen, as I've tried to read the tea leaves, as we've talked to Joe, we've all talked to whoever we know, to whoever we can, to get insights as to how they would approach things and how they think the Giants might approach things. I think that I know what Joe might like to do. I think I know what he might like to do. But I also think that the reality of the situation is that Joe doesn't even know at this point what he's going to be capable of doing. Um, just so framing it that way, your thoughts on the pick at 6, on what you think, and again, just your opinion, what you think Joe would like to do and whether he's going to be capable of pulling it off.
I think he would like a quarterback. I don't know that he will get one of the top guys because I could see a scenario where at least the first 3 picks off the board are quarterbacks. And, is one of those quarterbacks going to be JJ McCarthy? I don't know that. But the other thing you got to be careful of is Will a team like the Vikings, who have 2 first-round picks, will they put together a package to move up to say 4 or 5? Will the Denver Broncos, who are said to want a quarterback, put together a package to move up? So I think Joe Shane would like to get a quarterback, but I think what will ultimately happen is they will get a receiver. Now, will they get the receiver at 6, or will they trade down a couple of spots to pick up more draft options? That I could see. I would not like to see them move out of the top 10. If they, were to swap places with, I don't know, who's behind them. Tennessee is behind them, and I think
Atlanta's at
Atlanta's
8,
behind
and
them.
then Chicago's at
And then
9.
Chicago, none of those teams, Chicago probably needs a receiver, but you figure the Titans are probably eyeing Joe Alt, and Atlanta probably wants an edge rusher. So, if you can work something out, move down with one of those teams and still get your receiver, go for it. So that's how I think it's going to play out. But, obviously, we'll see what happens at the top of the board.
Absolutely. And I think I think Monday morning, I think I saw the report that the Patriots, who have the 3rd pick, they're said to want an unprecedented deal or an unprecedented haul for that 3rd pick. And I think the Giants are handicapped by only having 6 picks. There's just they gave up that second round pick in the Brian Burns deal, and by no stretch was that a mistake. You get a chance to bring in a difference maker like that, you do it, but it does leave them in a situation where it's really difficult for them to give up, a massive haul to go move up. I think because my thought is that's more or less punting on 2024. If they do that, you agree with me there?
Yes and no. I mean, truthfully, Ed, or even if they keep all their picks and do the mindful, are they really going to be in a position to where we could say, oh, they're going to challenge for the Super Bowl?
No.
Probably not. So I you don't want to see a team punt on a season, but you also have to be realistic and say, okay, how far away are we? So I think we can both agree that the Giants are still a ways away from being, in the same class as the Chiefs or the 49ers or some of the other teams that are regularly going deep into the playoffs. So you got to build up, and so, I wouldn't hate it. I always say that it depends on the quality of the draft picks. You can have 4 draft picks like they did in 2005, and 3 of those 4 were home runs, or you can have 10 draft picks and oh, maybe 2 or 3 of them work out. So it's about quality over quantity, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And that's why, we talk about the wide receiver, and that's why, as much as I tend to support the trade down, I'm with you in the sense that if the Giants make a trade down, I would prefer not to see them make a trade down to 12 with Denver, or make a trade down to 13 with Las Vegas, or 11 with Minnesota. If they make a trade down, I would like to see them, add an asset or two, but still be able to get one of those top 3 wide receivers.
Yeah, and I think that makes the most sense. I mean, if you look at Joe Shane's draft history, he has never been afraid to move around the board, but you got to have chips to move around the board. So if you could pick up an extra, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd round pick, and then maybe use that extra pick to move back into the 1st round, or if it's a 3rd round pick, move back, move up in the 2nd round. I could see Shane doing that. I mean, he did it last year. He moved around, I think, back to back on the second, was it the 3rd and 4th round? I know he did. He made 2 trades.
Well,
I'm sorry,
he
no,
traded
he traded
he traded up
first
for
and third
Banks, and then
and third.
and
Yeah,
then he
first and
traded
third.
up again for Jalen Hyatt.
Yep. So, all
I
right. So
think
the
I
point being,
think in his
he moved
first
twice.
draft, his first draft he traded down somewhere
I
along the
think
way.
so. I think so. So, the point being is Shane has a history of moving around the board. He's not going to sit there and wait till his term comes up, but you need the assets to do that. And right now, the assets are thin. So,
Right. Yeah, but I'm with you. I do expect Joe to play the board as much as he possibly can, try to add some assets, try to move around. If he doesn't get that quarterback at 6, maybe try to target a guy later on. Um, but you've written this at Giants Country, and I think you feel the way that I do, whether it's 6 or 3 or 4 or the 3rd round. I think the Giants have to add something to that quarterback room. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. People, I know there are a lot of Daniel Jones supporter out there, but you cannot ignore the injury history. And I know people are going to say, well, everybody gets injured. Okay, but not everybody gets 2 neck injuries within 3 years, which is a concern for me. So that's something you have to look at. Daniel Jones is coming off the ACL, and while there's every reason to believe he's going to be fine and he's going to be able to function again, how much is that is going to take its toll on his athleticism? We saw it with Saquon Barkley. Could we say that, can we agree that Barkley, when he came off the ACL, lost a little bit of that explosiveness and some of that, wiggle that he had prior to the injury? So, these are all things you have to take into consideration. And I haven't even touched upon the fact that, Jones regressed last year. People will say, well, he didn't have Barkley. He didn't have Andrew Thomas. He didn't have this. He didn't have that. Well, you know what? He doesn't have Barkley this year. Darren Waller's going to probably retire. The offensive line should be better. So what's going to be the excuse this year if he continues to regress? At this point, you got to say, okay, has Daniel Jones reached his ceiling? Last year, he gave him 2 good quarters of football in 6 games. The rest of it, it was like, what are we watching here?
What I've said about Jones, Patty, and see if you agree with this, is we've had 5 years of Jones. We've had one really, really good year. We've Even though the statistics weren't, top of the line passing stats, he played really, really well in 2022. He had a nice stretch for a while in his rookie year. The rest of it hasn't been great. And what I've said over and over is, at some point you have to look at it and say, this is what a guy is. At some point you have to make a decision. If 2022 is the best you're going to get, is that good enough? And the other part of that is, as you said, the injuries, the fact that there's one more year of guaranteed money left on his contract. It just sets up as a year where, for me, the timing is right to go get a quarterback, whether it's 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round. The timing is right because you don't have to force that guy. You can let him develop and see if he's the answer. And then, play him in 2025 or play him late in 2024. But for me, it's like, at some point you have to stop arguing about what Daniel Jones is and whose fault it is and try something different.
Yeah, look, Daniel Jones came in here, worked his tail off, good locker room citizen, respected by his teammates, was voted a team captain. Was he a victim of some of the circumstances created by the organization? Absolutely. And it's unfortunate. The change in coordinators every 2 years did not help. The change in head coaches did not help. The lack of an offensive line and a solid, the lack of a number one receiver did not help. But, the processing, he continues to struggle with post snap processing. The shyness, the gun shyness that he had with taking shots down the field, even when there were shots to be taken. Because the offensive line, as bad as it's not bad on every single snap. There are snaps when they actually hold up their end of the bargain. And if he's just not seeing things, or if he's shell shocked, what then why are we beating a dead horse here? It almost reminds me of what happened with David Carr years ago when the Houston Texans took him. He was a very highly touted prospect, and he played behind a bad offensive line. And unfortunately, he became shell shocked, and he went from being this, the promised one, to being just another guy. And it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at kind of right now, I think, with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. And I like Jones. I
I
like
do
Jones.
too.
I've always supported Jones, and but circumstances being what they are, um, it's time for the Giants to set up a post Daniel Jones era if they possibly can. With
Yeah.
that being said, who is the quarterback in this draft that you're going to bang the table for and say, if they can get him, that's the quarterback I want the Giants to get?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, I would like, hmm, at six you're talking about, or
At 6, or
or
if
down?
or down, up. I mean,
Uh,
if they're gonna mortgage a bunch of picks to go get a guy, I'm just who's
I
your
would say
guy?
probably Drake May would make the most sense. Um, but I would not hate it if they went with Bo Nix. I know a lot of people like Michael Penix Jr. I don't know necessarily that you can make the argument that, oh, if you're gonna say, oh, Daniel Jones and this injury history, well, I think you got to, the same would hold true for Michael Penix. Although, obviously guys can shake the injury label. It's been done before. Um, I wondered if maybe Spencer Rattler was in the equation. Not certainly not in the first round, but maybe as a developmental prospect. But is there a quarterback that I'm banging the table for? I would say maybe Drake May, but I don't. I want a receiver. That would be
Mhm.
my. That's what I'm really banging the table for, and I've been banging the table for weeks for Roma Dunze because I just like the game that he plays. I like the intangibles. Um, there's just something about him that just screams that this kid's going to be great. And obviously we have to wait and see because there's been other kids like that. But I want Roma Dunze, truth be told, in the first round.
I'm with you to the extent that if it's not going to be quarterback, then Odunze is my guy as well. Listen, I would I would take, and I have said to Giants fans, if they get a wide, if they get one of those big three wide receivers, that Giants fans should be happy with that. But Dunze is my guy. Parent, just that like he's your guy. And for a lot of reasons, I think he fits incredibly well with what the Giants have. I think he gives them size, speed, contested catch ability to win at all three levels of the field. And I love his attitude. I love his work ethic. I love what he did at the combine. So he's been my guy for weeks now. So we're on the same page there. And I'm also with you. I tend to think Drake May would be the guy that, if they can get him quarterback wise, my guess is he's the guy they wouldn't let go by.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Look, I mean, whatever quarterback they take, I would say there's probably a very good chance that kid's going to sit for the first year or
Hmm.
most of the first year.
Most of it. Hmm.
So there's no rush. That's why when they say Daniel Jones is going to be the starter, if healthy, that's why they're saying it.
Hmm.
That's why, people are saying that Daniel Jones right now is the best option. I mean, think about it. Drew Lock still has to learn the system. Tommy DeVito, we have to see how far he's come along. But Daniel Jones has the most experience in this system. And, whether people like it or not, he probably at this point, as of today, is the Giants' best option. Now, will he be the best option, by the end of the training camp period? We'll see, probably, but we'll have to see because I don't anticipate Jones is going to play in the preseason. I think Locke will do it. And I think that's going to be interesting to see whether the Giants stick to this with Daniel Jones that, oh, he's ready. So we're going to put him out there, despite the fact that I don't see him playing in the preseason. Or do they say, you know what? We got the rookie some snaps. Maybe, we start him sooner. I think they stay with Daniel Jones to start the season, but, and develop that rookie. But it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds.
Absolutely, Patty. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Michael Penix and the injury history, and I've been saying the same thing. It's very, very difficult, whatever the skill set is, for the Giants to justify selecting Penix and making Penix the quarterback of the future per se, when part of the reason is Daniel Jones' injury history. Did you did you take away when we were at Joe's press conference the other day? He talked about injuries, and my impression was that one of the things is they would really rather avoid guys with extensive injury histories. I kind of he didn't say that directly, but I think he sort of hinted that guys with injury histories, are going to be hard for them to select.
Well, I think he learned his lesson. I mean, if you look at all the free agent acquisitions he made, those guys have relatively clean injury histories. You go back to the previous year, Darren Waller had a history. Paris Campbell, although he wasn't used much, was coming off of a history. So, the one of the things that Dave Gettleman used to say that I agree with is injured guys are going to get injured. And, if you're going to invest, that's kind of like, investing in I don't know, a used car that has had problems. Are you almost better off investing in a new car for the same amount of money that, it might cost you to fix the used car? So, with players, if they have a chronic injury history that affects the part of their body that they're going to need most, like, for example, if it's a receiver and he has two bad knees, for example, is it really smart to invest in that? If it's a quarterback and he has had shoulder issues, especially to his throwing shoulder, is it really smart to invest in that type of guy, especially a high premium type pick? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I hear you, and that's why, talent or no talent, I have a hard time seeing Penix land with the Giants. Patty, let's talk about day 2, day 3. Let's get beyond quarterback, wide receiver. Um, another thing that Gettleman used to say, and it's funny how we go back to things Gettleman used to say because be he might not have been a great general manager, but you can find nuggets of things that he said that 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 make a lot of sense. And one of the things he always used to say is you don't want to shop hungry when you get to the
Right.
draft.
Yep.
And yet there are positions where, because of the way the Giants roster is, there are positions where the Giants are hungry. And get beyond quarterback and wide receiver. And for you, what are a couple of those positions where you think the Giants have just got to add to before the season starts?
Well, I think we can agree that cornerback is a must. I think we can also agree that interior defensive line depth is probably a strong need. Safety would also be a strong need. On the offensive side of the ball, you can maybe make a case to continue adding to the offensive line, particularly a tackle. Get a nice young developmental tackle in here that Carmen Brasillo can groom. Could you make a case for tight end? Maybe, especially if you don't have Darren Waller back, which it looks like will not be the case. Get a nice complementary piece to go along with Daniel Bellinger at that position. Can you say, add another a pass rusher? Well, didn't Ernie Accorsi used to say, and correctly so, you can never have too many pass rushers. Um, so yeah, I mean, you can make the case that they need help across the board at every position. Maybe inside linebacker is the one that I don't think they need to address. I think they're fine there. But prioritizing it, I would say that I could see this being a heavily defensive draft for the Giants. I could see, cornerback too, I think is a must. Interior defensive line, like I said, safety. Another edge rusher would not be a bad idea because, you don't know if you're going to have Aziz Ojulari healthy or not. So, there are needs across the board, but It's just a matter of how they prioritize what they need and can they live with it. For example, with a tight end, you can say, oh, they got to get a tight end if Waller retires. Well, if you get a number one receiver, now maybe that lessens the need a little bit because you can get by with Bellinger for this year. So it's all in how they prioritize what they need.
I always think that free agency is a tell for what's going to happen in the draft. And Joe said the other day he just wants to let the board talk to us and see what happens. And you can make the argument that as you said, there's needs across the board. So you get your quarterback, you get your wide receiver, and for the rest of whatever you do, you just take what's highest on your board. Um, but I think it's an argument where I just wonder, with what they've done in free agency, and they went heavily on offense in free agency, and maybe that's a tell. I still think they need to get more playmaking weapons, but you would you tend to think that that because of what they did in free agency, that might be part of the reason they would go more on the defensive side?
I think so. You mentioned they need more playmakers. Their core receiver group right now, excuse me, with Darius Slayton, Wandale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, that's not a bad core. A number one receiver will help elevate that unit. So I think they do have playmakers at receiver. Just get a number one guy in there, which is going to really make, a night and day difference, I think. Um, running back, we know that's going to be a committee. I mean, that's how it's shaping up. And Devin Singletary is going to lead that committee. Will he get the same kind of high volume that Saquon got when he was here? Probably not. But there will be that committee approach. Offensive line, they've added 5 guys. Now, are all 5 of them going to make the roster? We'll have to see, obviously. But they also have a couple guys that, does Brasillo feel that those guys, Azudu and Marcus McKeithen, can they develop? Do they add another guy, like I said, another offensive tackle, which I think makes sense. So they have options, and that's what they need because especially at those positions that just really didn't work out well for them in the past. Give the coach some more options, and just see how the chips fall.
Absolutely. I think I like the idea of a developmental tackle simply because we know the Giants are going to give Evan Neal a chance. And I know some Giants fans don't want to hear it, but they're going to give him an opportunity. If it doesn't work out, they can slide Jermaine Illuminor out to right tackle. Um, they can put Neal on the bench. They can put him in a competition for guard. I don't know what they would do, but they also have coverage at guard with some of what they've done in free agency. What they don't maybe have is long-term coverage at right tackle if Neal's
Right.
doesn't work out. So that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Um, just what let me ask you this. Let's just close up with this. Um, Big picture, what would surprise you the most i- for the Giants in this draft? Something that happens or something that doesn't happen? What would surprise you the most about how this draft turns out for the Giants?
Oh, that's easy. If they punt on a quarterback and not take one. I know Joe Shane has said, "Oh, I'd be comfortable going into the 2024 season with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito."
Nonsense.
We have confidence still. I have confidence still in Daniel Jones. What else is he supposed to say to those questions? I mean, the Giants, they'll sit there and they say, "Well, we do due diligence on every position every year." True. But can we agree that based on reports, that they've done a little extra this year on that position group?
Just a
Can we
wee little bit, Patty.
just a wee little bit? Okay. Considering you have other needs, wouldn't you think that, they would do more work on these other needs that they have, cornerback and whatnot. It's I like to draw this comparison, and that is, look, this is a deep quarterbacks class. That's not to say that you won't get a quarterback, in subsequent years, but it's like going into a store, and I speak from experience with this because I go through this with my husband all the time. We go to like a Sam's Club or a BJ's Wholesale, and you know how there are products on the shelf, and you have no idea if those products are going to be there the next time you come. And it looks like, you've got a whole bunch of stuff. So we used to go down the tool aisle because my husband likes power tools and stuff. And he would go down there and he would pick something up, put it in the cart, think about it, put it back on the shelf, put it back in the cart, put it back on the shelf. And I'd be like, if you want it, just take it, just get it, because you don't know if it's going to be there the next time we come. He goes, oh, and he'd flip flop and he wouldn't make up his mind. And it used to drive me crazy. And I'd say to him, Lee, just take if you want the tool, put it in the cart and buy it. Don't hesitate. It's kind of the same thing here. If you really want a quarterback, prioritize what you want. Don't settle. I'm not suggesting you settle. So let's make that clear. But don't, say, well, should I or should I not? Don't waffle. Make up your mind. Go in, and if you want a quarterback, take the quarterback.
Let me ask you, in closing, the question that I tried to get Joe to answer the other day at the press conference. Is it a bigger sin for a general manager to be in love with a quarterback, to go ahead and take that swing and swing and miss, to get it wrong? Okay. Or in your mind, is it a bigger sin to be in love with that quarterback? You love the quarterback, you need the quarterback, but for whatever reason, you pass on the quarterback. And then you watch that guy turn into a star somewhere else. Which, in your mind, which one's a bigger sin? Swing and miss or pass on the guy?
Pass on the guy easily. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Look, if you do your due diligence and you have all your data, if you fall in love with somebody and he doesn't work out, maybe he doesn't work out because of injuries or, something pops up. I mean, it can be any number of things. All right. Look, they fell in love with Daniel Jones and he hasn't worked out. I think we can both agree on that.
But they took the swing.
But they took the swing. Exactly. So if you fall in love with somebody and you pass on them, you're going to live with regret the rest of your life. You're going to say, well, what if I had done it? It's like anything in life. If you fall in love with somebody and you say, oh gosh, I should have married that person. Instead, I settled and I married this. How happy are you going to really be? So yeah, I think the bigger sin is to pass on a guy that you love. If the value is there, it matches a need. Why wouldn't you take that chance?
Absolutely. I agree with you. And we will see in a couple of days. We will see if there is a guy that the Giants are in love with enough to take that swing. And Patty, it is certainly going to be one of the most interesting drafts that I can remember. And Lord only knows, who's going to pick who and in what spots they're going to pick, guys, because I think people in that first round, I think teams are going to be moving all over the place.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a very fun, interesting draft, and I am glad that the mock draft season is coming to an end. And now it's like you said on my show, we're going to see what the Giants do or don't do that ends up breaking Twitter.
And then we're just going to argue about that. All right, Patty, thank you very, very much for the time. Thank you for listening, Giants fans. Please stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.